Hello, class, everyone. You guys all should have gone through the course introduction and are ready to start the course. So we are going to start off right with chapter one, work our way through. So this lesson right now is chapter one. Chapter one's focus is all about identity and how your identity relates to ideologies and how your ideology is directly connected to that identity. So, ideology, we're going to have to kind of evolve the definition of ideology throughout the course, but this is kind of where we're going to start. One thing that I always tell my social studies students is if you come across a word that you don't know, usually your best guess puts you in a really good position towards understanding the term. And when I throw up the word ideology on a board and I ask people, what do you think ideology means? One of the words that pops out into their mind is idea, right? Ideologies are centered around ideas. They're a system of thought that try to explain who we are and how we should live together. Right? It's kind of similar to our worldview, and it is intrinsically linked to our individual and collective identity. It's the system of ideas, right, that shape who and how we should live together. Kind of made a graphic here to kind of help you kind of get where ideology and identity kind of inform and interact with each other. When you think about your identity, whether that be individual or collective, it's tied to your religion, either the religion that you are brought up in, the religion you converted to, the religion of your community, anything like that impacts who you are, right? You either embrace that religion or reject that religion, enjoy it, live by its teachings, or disagree with it. And whichever way that you've kind of leaned towards has impacted your identity. Same with spirituality, same with gender. If you were born male, female, asex, any of those things, then that's going to impact who you are, right? If you were raised being told, here's a toy truck, or here's some dolls to play with, all of those things have impacted who you are today and make up your identity. And again, you've either embraced that gender identity or you've rejected that gender identity. Relationship to land, growing up here in northern Alberta, or growing up in a beach destination, or growing up in a Mennonite community, or an indigenous community, or a forestry town, any of those pieces have tied to your relationship to the land in which you were raised and then builds your identity. Same with the environment, the media that you consume, television, comic books, movies, etc. All of those things have had an impact on your identity. When you think about lots of people's different identities and their identity expression, a lot of it has to do with media. So some people really like Harry Potter, and they make that a big portion of their identity. I knew someone who would like introduce themselves as a Hufflepuff, right? That is media that has impacted their identity, and then using their identity or using media to express their identity. Language, right? English, French, German, Low German, High German, Cree, Beaver, Dene, any of those languages really impact someone's identity. And again, it impacts your identity, and then it also is a way of expressing your identity, right? If I speak English, or if I speak, let's say, a language of my community and my town, or anything like that, that's a way of me expressing my identity. So if someone hears me speaking, let's say, French, for example, that is a way that I'm expressing my connection to the French collective identity. And then culture as well. Culture is a huge one. So that all those pieces of identity then inform your ideology, right? Your beliefs about human nature. Are humans greedy? Are humans naturally good? Do humans deserve to be saved? Do they not be deserve to be saved? Right? A whole bunch of shows and movies grapple with kind of the protagonist and the antagonist and their different views about beliefs about human nature, right? So I just finished watching Stranger Things season 4, and the main antagonist, right? If you haven't watched it, I won't give too much away, but Vecna, um, their beliefs about human nature is that they don't deserve to be saved, right? They kind of have wrecked everything and they need to be wiped off of the earth. And so those beliefs about human nature very differently than Eleven and Dustin and Mike and Will and Luke and all of them, right? Because their beliefs are that humans deserve to be saved. And then how do we organize society? Do we have government leading things? Do we have a queen or a king or a royal family? All of those pieces. Do we have smaller governments like provincial governments and municipal governments? Does our community choose to be a town or a hamlet? All of those pieces are you're answering the question, how do we organize society? And then beliefs about society, right? Your beliefs about society will often dictate how you believe society should be organized. So if you believe that society should be free to do whatever and whenever they want to do things, then you may believe in more of a capitalistic society with a limited amount of government. Whereas, let's say, if you say you believe that there's some inherent problems in society and a lot of inequality, so maybe we need a little bit more government to help with that equality. And then also visions of the future, right? Do you see our future in one way or another? And those visions are informed by our ideology. Same with interpretations of history. Do you have a positive view of our history or a negative view of our history or somewhere in the middle? And how do we interact with and address contemporary and historical issues that we face? So, if we are dealing with the contemporary issue of COVID 19, right, which is hopefully over, um, how we interact with and address that contemporary issue of COVID 19 is based on our ideology. And we are going to have different views on how we interact with and address something like the pandemic based on our ideological views. And our ideology is the way it is because of our identity. And in one way, our identity is also impacted by our ideology. So, for example, if I lived in a community that did not want to address or work with the climate change emergency, right? Growing up in that, maybe I am impacted by that, my identity, that I don't believe in climate change. Or the reverse. I could say I grew up in a community that didn't believe in climate change, so and that really impacted me, so I'm going to really reject my community's ideology, and I as an individual, my individual identity and my individual ideology tells me not to agree with that, so I'm not going to, right? So those pieces, that's why there's an arrow right in the middle, right? They go back and forth, right? Your ideology impacts your identity, and your identity impacts your ideology. I hope that this makes sense. You are going to the whole course is about ideology. So we're going to bring more and more pieces into this and hopefully nail home what ideology means and why it's so significant as humans. So we're going to go through all of those pieces of ideology, and we're going to start with the beliefs about human nature, right? So those same things that I said, are humans good or are they evil, right? What is the meaning of life? What is our purpose on this earth? All of those pieces are tying to human nature, and that is directly linked to our ideology. History is full of stories, both of extreme humanity, right? Saving each other, working together, and brutality, right? When we think about the Holocaust, the Armenian genocide, the genocide in Rwanda, residential schools, all of those pieces um, are have a lot of brutality, a lot of violence, and come with a lot of hurt, right? And then there are stories of extreme humanity, right? Coming together, working together to solve a crisis or a war or anything like that. So most people live between the extremes, right? Where they're not really seeing that extreme brutality or extreme humanity. They're kind of like living in the middle. And then there's those who've been exposed to immense kindness or extreme brutality. And they may view the world differently than each other because of those impacts, right? For example, if I was a um, foster child and I had a horrible experience in the foster care system, my beliefs in foster care might be very different than someone who has never experienced foster care and grew up within a very stable household. So, all of our experiences and beliefs about human nature are directly linked to our experiences with humans. So, a couple quotes here. First one from Henry Miller, who's an American writer. He says, "It is silly to go on pretending that under the skin we are all brothers. The truth is, most likely, that under the skin we are all cannibals, assassins, traitors, liars, and hypocrites." Right? So obviously someone hurt Henry, right? Henry's belief about human nature is that we're cannibals, assassins, traitors, liars, and hypocrites, right? And all of those pieces are directly linked to his ideology. And he may make some decisions about which political party to support, all of those pieces based on his beliefs about human nature. The next is Mahatma Gandhi. Many people know Gandhi as a spiritual and political leader and as a huge humanitarian in historical India. "You must not lose faith in humanity. Humanity is an ocean. In a few drops of the ocean are dirty, the ocean does not become dirty." So Gandhi's view here is that even though we've got, and you've probably heard like a few bad apples or a couple different sayings like that, just because some humans aren't good doesn't mean all aren't good. Andre Gide, a French author, said, "So long as we live among men, let us cherish humanity." Right? So all three of these quotes kind of give us a sense into what those people believe and what their views on human nature look like, either positive or negative. Just take a moment and think about like which of these three quotes do you think you identify with the most? Okay, these bad boys. you are going to learn a lot about influential philosophers. Some students say that this is the hardest part of Social 30, just remembering these people. I will try my best to bring them up over and over and over again, to help you kind of nail in what these people believe and why their thoughts have been so influential, right, in ideological thinking. So Thomas Hobbes is the first one, and he believed that human nature is categorized by fear, violence, and dangerous self-interest. So he favored giving up freedom for an absolute monarchy. And the reason he believed that humans should have less freedom and that we should be run by a monarchy is because humans, he believed, are dangerously self interested, right? Instead of making decisions based on the best interest of everyone, of the community, a lot of humans, in Hobbes's view, make their decisions based on their self interest. And he believed that that wasn't good. So, even though Hobbes believed that a monarchy should exist and freedom should be somewhat limited, he believed that the monarchy should have what is called a limited government. And that limited government is the idea that government does not have absolute single authority like a dictator. Hobbes did not believe that there should be many limits on government, but he did not think that a sovereign should do anything that would injure his or her subjects, right? So he believed that the monarchy needed to make their decisions based on what was best for people and not for themselves. And when we look back in time, a lot of monarchies that you may have looked at, for example, in Social 20, the French monarch, a lot of the monarch was wealthy and doing very well while the country was starving. So Hobbes believed that shouldn't be the case, and that they shouldn't do anything that would injure the subjects of the country. The next influential philosopher we're going to look at is John Locke. He believed that people are rational, the people are intelligent, and they're reasonable, and that power should lie with the people. The only reason for a government to exist is that government should protect life, liberty, and property. So, with these views on humans, Locke favored a representative democracy like the one that exists in the United States and Canada. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, another influential philosopher, he said that man is born free and everywhere he is in chains. So he believed private property and ownership led to corruption, that people lost their compassion for one another and based their happiness on the opinions of others. And he wanted to strip humanity and society and bring them back to what made them equal and good. So, if any of you know your political systems very well, he believed more in like a middle ground, not complete freedom, but not a complete dictatorship or a complete monarchy either. Kind of believed in a little bit of socialism. So I want you to take some time right now and think about what your beliefs are about society, right? Do you like our political leadership right now? Do you like a political leadership in other countries? Do you dislike political leadership in other countries? Okay? Think about what's happening in North Korea, right? Do you disagree, agree with what's going on in North Korea? Do you favor any political leaders in other countries? The past president of the United States, Obama, past president of the United States, Trump, the current president, Biden, our prime minister, Justin Trudeau. Do you like him? Do you not like him? All of those questions that you're answering to yourself right now will kind of help you settle in on what your ideological beliefs might be. Here's some other questions to think about. Place you in your ideological perspective. Should there be no smoking in bars or pubs or anywhere? What are your views on smoking? Right? Should people have freedom to smoke wherever they want, or should they be restricted to smoke because of its effects on others and the effects of secondhand smoke? Should there be free healthcare? Should we pay for healthcare? Should healthcare be paid for by taxes? Should everyone have equal access to healthcare? Or should those with the money and the means be able to get more access to healthcare than those that don't? Should we help fund a new hockey arena? Should taxpayers pay for that? Should individuals pay for that? Should the hockey team pay for that? All of those kind of questions will help you get a sense of your ideological and political views. Is the amount of money you make, the car you drive, the home you live in the most important thing for you? Can you drive a Ferrari through a poor neighborhood and still feel good about yourself? All of those questions kind of seek for you to be a little bit critical about your personal views. And then beliefs about the structure of society. So there's informal social structures, right? Written rules about acceptable social behavior and actions. And then there's political structures, right? In Canada, we regulate our political structure through government, democracy, and the law. We also have economic structures wherever humans wherever humans live, there's economies, right? Economies are all about money or the exchange of goods. So whenever we discuss economies, we are talking about land, labor, and capital. Basically, every society has to answer economic questions, right? What should be produced, how to produce it, and who consumes what's produced, right? So if we were looking at Canada, for example, right? What should be produced? In Canada, because we have a lot of economic freedom, what should be produced are the things that people think that we will buy. So here I've got my Apple iPhone, right? So the CEO of Apple, right? Steve, well, it's not Steve Jobs anymore. Tim something. I was gonna say Tim Apple because that's what Trump said once, but that's not his name. And his first name's Tim. Anyway, he sits there and he says, "We need to produce a new iPhone." That's what he's answering. What should be produced? A new iPhone. How do we produce it? He's answering that question. A private business owner. He's gonna say, well, we're gonna need some products from around the world, right? We're gonna need natural raw materials from Malaysia and some countries in Africa, and then we are gonna get them together, produce them in China, where manufacturing is really cheap. And then he answers the final question: who consumes the iPhone that we produce? And the answer is whoever can afford it. So those economic questions have kind of indicated that we live in a capitalistic society because the questions are being answered by corporations and companies, right? In a more like socialist or communist country, these questions may be answered more by the government, right? So if we were looking at, let's say, the former Soviet Union, what should be produced? Okay, what does our society need? Well, our society really needs cars. How to produce it? What they're going to do is they're going to look at, well, we're not going to produce a bunch of different types of cars because that's really unnecessary. So we're going to produce maybe two different cars, and they can have a choice between those two cars, and we are going to manufacture it here in Soviet Union so that the jobs go to our citizens. Who consumes the product? Everyone that needs a car gets the product, right? And no, that question was answered very differently than the iPhone. And that's what has changed from a centrally planned economy, communism, to capitalism, a more free economic system. What is better is up for you to decide. So these rules about who benefits from the fruits of labor and resources in society are those questions that governments and people decide, right? How much should people get paid? Should there be a minimum? Does the government step in to set wages, prices, hours worked? Should the market determine the economic flow of land, labor, and capital? The answers to these questions will tell you whether or not you believe in more of a capitalist system of economic freedom or a more communist system of economic equality. Again, communism that believes that society, through government, is responsible for the well being of its members. Everything is owned by the government and shared by everyone. Again, this is ideally. Communism hasn't quite worked as well as it's displayed in theory, right? Everything is owned by the government and shared by everyone equally, right? We can look at, let's say, China or Cuba or the old Soviet Union or even Russia today, and that's not necessarily happening ideally. The other thing is that there's no private property, right? I don't own this piece of land, and that person doesn't own a separate piece of land. Everything is owned by the government and technically owned by everyone, right? The idea is that you're motivated to work hard because society wants everyone to be provided for. And it's on the left of the economic spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, the right wing, is capitalism. Capitalism believes that the market should set prices and wages, right? The market is kind of what we were talking about with the iPhone, right? Someone looks out at everyone buying and selling, and they say, lots of people are really buying a lot of technology right now. Let's make more technology. And that means that our economy is by steered by the market. So there's a lot of economic freedom. You can buy what you want, work where you want, spend your money how you want, save your money how you want. Those are all central in capitalism. Uh, one of the biggest downsides for capitalism is that there is often a lot of economic inequality, right? There are people with very large incomes and very, very small incomes, right? You have people making hundreds of billions of dollars, um, living in houses that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, driving around on a super yacht, and there are people who have no home at all, right? And so that income gap is often quite large under capitalism and grows every year that capitalism exists in a society. You're going to see tons of spectrums, and it's really important to remember your spectrums, where things fall, and we'll build on this again as the course goes on. just in chapter 1, right? And the left side of the spectrum is communism, right? Economic equality. And on the other end of the spectrum is economic freedom, right? And there's extremes and there's middle ground. So we just talked about economics, and now we're going to talk about politics, right? So political freedom is the concept of democracy, right? If you have the freedom to vote for leaders, vote for parties, you have a lot of political freedom. In politically free countries, you can freely challenge the government, free press. You can say, I don't like what the government is doing, and you're allowed to say it publicly. In countries that don't have political freedom, you're not allowed to disagree with the government so freely and so loudly. And in societies with political freedom, there's a lot of individual rights and freedoms that exist for every citizen and collective group, right? In Canada, we have the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that is enshrined in our Constitution, and it's protected for each and every one of us, with the caveat, right, that our rights and freedoms don't infringe on anyone else's, right? So, for example, we have free speech, but we don't have the freedom to discriminate on someone else, right? Because people are also have the right to be free from discrimination. And our freedom of speech doesn't give us the strength to take away someone's right to be free from discrimination, right? So there's of course limits to our freedoms in democratic countries, but usually it's for the best of society. Political control, right? So on one side we have political freedom, and then the other we have political control. Countries like China, North Korea, and Russia, right? Individuals do not vote for their leaders, and if they do, these elections are usually fake. For example, I heard of cases where people would just go to the ballot box and there would just be one choice, right? So at that point, what's the point of voting? But there's still the voting that happens. People do not know what is reality and what is not. All information comes from the government. Lots of people believe that this is kind of a way to maintain political control, and this idea of brainwashing society. All right, there are also no individual rights and freedoms. Example, people are put in jail for supporting democracy or alternate political systems. So on this side, right, political freedom is always at the top and political control is always at the bottom. I'm just going to go back, sorry. Sometimes you'll see these two combined, where you have the political going up and down and the economic going left and right. And sometimes you can see them completely separate. Sometimes this spectrum, the political spectrum, isn't going up and down, it's going left and right. And on that case, often the political freedoms for individuals will be on the right and political control will be on the left. Moving on to interpretations of history, right? Based on our ideology, we are going to look at the past different, right? Our beliefs and values tell us that our history, certain historical events are good or bad or somewhere in the middle, right? The example that I'm going to use is in the United States. They have something called Columbus Day. And Columbus Day is used to celebrate the arrival of Christopher Columbus to the New World in 1492, right? And some people looked at Christopher Columbus or Columbus Day as good, as something to celebrate, and others looked at the day as something bad and not to celebrate, right? So our views on that history are probably going to be impacted by all of those pieces of our identity and our history as individuals. And then also, as we possibly learn some new things about Christopher Columbus, right? Maybe we have a very shallow or very surface level understanding of what happened. So I'm going to go through some multiple perspectives on this American national holiday. So here's one. Columbus Day shouldn't even be on the calendar because Columbus was the one who started the genocide against Native Americans, right? So this Michelle, you could probably call her a progressivist, right? And progressivism, if you look at this little box right here, is the ideological perspective that believes we have made some bad decisions in our past and it's time to move forward and change for the better as society. So Michelle probably believes that Columbus made a lot of mistakes. He kind of kickstarted the genocide towards indigenous peoples in the Americas. And so we need to change the day maybe and make it better. Little cartoon at the bottom. Is today's Columbus Day. If it wasn't for him, we'd be Europeans, right? So another perspective, kind of in the middle. Yeah, a lot of people would not exist, and if they did exist, they would look very differently. If Canada and the United States, well, the whole of Americas, um, didn't have the contact that it did. I thought I had more. Maybe I just had the one slide. Okay. Um, so I kind of threw a couple different political views on a spectrum. And this spectrum is based on the answer to the question, based on our history as a society, how much should we change? Right? And on the left side of the spectrum is change. And on the right side of the spectrum is no change or actually going back in time. So we're going to start on the right side with reactionary, right? So someone who is reactionary to change will say, we've gone too far. We need to get back to our past when things were better. And usually reactionaries, the farther you go to the right, will say by any means necessary. The most famous reactionary was Hitler, right? Hitler believed we let Jews into our country, we have made too many changes, it is time to get back to our German roots, to get back to a pure Aryan race that we had in the past. We need to move back in time. We need to go back to our past. We can't change forward. We need to change back. And I'm not saying that all reactionaries are like Hitler, but Hitler is one of our most famous reactionaries, right? Next is conservative. So conservative is not extreme as reactionary. So a conservative may say our traditions and historical values are very important. We cannot change, right? So a conservative talking about Columbus Day will say that's an important day to recognize. We can't change it. On the flip side is progressivism. Progressivism is a little bit more of a moderate need to change, and they say we need to change and progress to be a better society. A progressivist, when we're talking about Columbus Day, for example, will say we need to change that day. We need to fix that day to be better as a society. And then on the far extreme left side is radical, and radicals believe in change now. We need a revolution by any means necessary. Radical and revolutionary are often go hand in hand, right? So an extreme example of being radical is, for example, the French Revolution, Napoleon Bonaparte, right? They were killing people, right? Killing the monarchy because they wanted to change French society and they wanted that change now, right? Same with the Russian Revolution. Vladimir Lenin, and then after Lenin, Stalin, they were very radical, right? They wanted to change Russian society into a new society, and that's how the Soviet Union emerged. Okay, moving on. Our ideologies inform our visions for the future. So most ideologies include a vision of what the world should be like in the future. This is based on beliefs and values of their ideology. One such ideological perspective that has a big vision for the future is environmentalism, right? It's an ideological perspective that focuses on a clean environment as their vision for the future, right? If you are someone who believes in environmentalism as an ideological perspective, you will probably look at your past and your present and say, we are not doing what we need to do to protect the environment. We have done very poor things in the past to protect our environment. And the future that we want is a clean, green future, right? And so environmentalism, like most ideological perspective, have a vision for the future. And that's all. So that is all for chapter 1. Now that we've finished kind of our video lesson, you guys can start working on your chapter 1 assignment, which is in the Brightspace. I will have a video posted in terms of helping understand the requirements of the assignment because it's your first assignment in the course, and then also how to submit. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and good luck on the chapter 1